So there we were, two burly men in a lumberyard, just weeping over God's perfect timing and his amazing provision for exactly what I had prayed for.
God's story, your life. Unfolding short stories.
Are you creative? Like, at all? Some of you might think, not really. But I'm sure that's not true. And have you ever wondered, what if God actually wants to meet you in the middle of creativity? In the Bible, there's this guy named Bezalel. I think I'm saying that right. God filled him with his spirit and gave him the skill to design the tabernacle with beauty and care. When I think about art and creativity, especially in the Bible, I think about this guy and I think about how God seems to value creativity. He's the master artist, and he's made us as artists as well. Well, I believe that he's still working that way today. In fact, you can just ask Jake Weidmann, one of the world's few master penmen. His master of calligraphy, drawing and painting, and sculpture through wood carving has drawn hundreds of thousands of followers and millions of views from viral videos. He has a new book called Old Soul, New Creation that invites us to slow down and create with intention and to see art as worship. And behind his breathtaking piece, The Old Rugged Cross, is a story of prayer, perfect timing, and the God who still shows up in the details.
My name is Jake Weidmann. I am an artist and a certified master penman. And one of the series I wanted to tackle over the course of my career was the creation of some of the most beloved hymns in history. My tradition, my discipline as a master penman reaches back even to the scribes of old, who dealt with writing down the earliest manuscripts, and especially the very word of God. And these special calligraphers, these great ancient scribes, were called illuminators because they believed that they brought the light of truth into the world by the written word. And it was reflected even in the way that they used to write their words down. They would use precious materials like gold leaf and lapis lazuli, these precious materials that would hold the light on the page. Or they might do the ornamentation of the title of the page in such a way that it would have a cast shadow to show that the light of God was always on that page. And so for me, being a modern artist, a modern master penman and scribe, I wanted to approach doing the hymns in very much the same way. These were revelations from God brought to a particular person at a particular time. And what I found as I dove into the backstory of each and every one of these beautiful hymns is that they were not only laden with this beautiful theology that was woven all through their lyrics, but they also had these tremendous backstories into how they were written. And so I've done a handful of hymns up to this point. I've done It Is Well With My Soul, His Eye Is on the Sparrow, Great Is Thy Faithfulness, Be Thou My Vision, and The Old Rugged Cross. And The Old Rugged Cross was commissioned by a couple, and they had met each other and fallen in love while singing hymns in this one-room chapel in the Midwest. And for this particular piece, I wanted to bring something else. I wanted to bring all of my talents to bear when it came to writing out the Old Rugged Cross. I was going to use calfskin vellum as the ancient scribes did and illuminate the written hymn on the piece, but even more than that, I wanted to set it into a full-size wooden cross. So I was not only bringing my talents of being a master penman to bear in the writing of the hymn, but I would bring my talents to the cross in the form of all of my skill as a wood carver and sculptor. And I wanted to actually set this hymn into old beams of a wooden cross. And I was looking for particularly black walnut. You see, black walnut is this beautiful wood. It's got this rich, dark color, and it was going to contrast beautifully with the basswood that I was going to carve around it, because I was actually framing out the hymn in this vine work that strung itself around the beams of the cross like a beautiful trellis. And so that was the intention. But after months and months of searching for these old beams, because I wanted something that was truly old, I didn't want it to be brand new wood and, distress it, because I wanted this wood to have a backstory. I wanted it to have age that you cannot mimic by any traditional method of distressing in your typical DIY sort of project. And so I had exhausted every resource I had as far as reclaimed materials, trying to find this super old wood with a great backstory. And then the day came. It was Good Friday, 2022, and being a bit discouraged at coming up dry for this particular wood, I sat down in my prayer journal and I actually wrote a prayer, and I said, Lord, I know you have led me to create this piece, and I know you have already set aside the materials that I will use to create this cross. Lord, I pray that you would lead me to them. And I knew that was a bold ask, but it was so specific, but I know the heart of the Lord, and he is one who romances me continually in the midst of my work. So I thought, what the heck? I'll just throw it up in prayer and see what happens. And there was one particular reclaimed lumberyard in the far east section of Colorado that I hadn't tried yet. And they have a contract with a lot of the Amish in the Midwest. And so anytime that the Amish tear down a structure like an old barn or chapel, they'll tear it down in pieces. And then this company comes and cleans up the wood and categorizes it and sells it in Colorado, of all places. And so I drove on Good Friday out to this lumberyard, which took me a couple of hours to get there. But once I did, I arrived, and there I found bay after bay just filled with every kind of wood you can imagine. There was hickory, walnut, chestnut, heart pine. And as I looked and wandered through the lumberyard, I could not see one bay that had any black walnut in it. And so here I thought I had come up dry. I finally met the lumberyard manager, and his name was Mike. And I told him, hey, Mike, I'm working on this project, and I'm looking for beams of black walnut. And I said, do you happen to have any with you? And he kind of gave me a little bit of a strange look, and he's like, yeah. He says, I might have some over here. And we went to this far bay that was mostly empty. It looked like it just had a bunch of scraps and cutoffs. And then he sort of shifts around this pile of wood in the far corner, and he pulls out this massive beam of black walnut that had gorgeous age on it. You could tell that it had been weather-worn and sun-beaten. It even had chew marks of some of the animals because it came from an old Amish barn. And it was exactly what I was looking for, but I needed one more piece. I need one more piece to make the cross piece of my cross. And so we wandered around searching through the whole lumberyard, and we couldn't find it. We went right back to the bay where we found the first beam, and there, standing up in the corner, was a piece the same dimension, width, and thickness, but just shorter length, standing up in the corner of the bay. And it was like it just appeared out of nowhere, but I know we had probably just missed it amidst the clutter. And I was like, that's it. I now have my beams. And I remember it was a really warm day, and I was already sweaty from shifting through wood. And here I heave this massive old beam up on my arm, and I press its splintered and weathered surface against my cheek as I took it to the back of my truck. And at that moment, it just hit me what that day was and what this piece was going to be, that on Good Friday, the Lord had led me to take up my own cross. And so immediately, chills overcame me, and I started I actually started crying right there in the lumberyard. And Mike, the lumberyard manager, he looked at me and he's, whoa, Jake, you okay? Did you throw out your back picking up that log? And I was like, no. I said, this is just a piece of wood I've been looking for a very long time. And it's intended for a very special art piece that I'm working on. And when I shared with him the drawing that it was intended for, my whole concept sketch of the hymn, he too started to weep. So there we were, two burly men in a lumberyard, just weeping over God's perfect timing and his amazing provision for exactly what I had prayed for.
I believe Jake's story is proof that God is not distant from the creative process. He's in it with us. From the beams of a cross to the strokes of a pen. Like in Jake's story, he guides and provides and reveals himself in the work. Earlier we mentioned Bezalel, who experienced it in the building of the tabernacle in the Old Testament. And in the story we just heard from Jake, we see that he experienced it in the carving of the old rugged cross. And I believe you can experience it too. If you were moved by Jake's story, you can check out his latest book, Old Soul, New Creation, Experiencing God Through a Life of Art and Faith. There's a link that you can check out in the show notes. The Unfolding is a faith podcast. You can discover more podcasts like The Unfolding at myfaithpodcasts.com.